All right. So this is a short demo of Periculum's product, which is called Phoenix. Phoenix is a product used for monitoring fraudulent activities. So there are two different parts of Phoenix. It's broken down into two separate products. The first one is Fraud Detect, which uses rules set by the fraud analyst. Uh, and the other one uses historical data of the individual's transaction to detect fraudulent activities around the transaction. So, in this short demo, I'll be giving an overview of how the product is currently being used and use case of the product. Okay, so the first thing is dashboard, which shows um, an overview of flag profiles, total pending cases, and total reviewed cases. So yes, so and there's also a list of how it works. So flag profiles are profiles of individual transactions that have matched the fraudulent rules that have been set by the risk analyst for this transaction. So in use cases whereby a particular user is has suspicion of fraudulent activities, it comes under flags profiles, and then the risk analyst has to review and see if that's the case or not. So pending cases are basically they are different. So I'll give an overview when I create a rule, but there are three different statuses of a transaction if it's allowed, meaning that it doesn't have any alter of fraudulent activity. If it's pending, meaning that if it falls into a range um, of is a possibility, but there's no accuracy of it, so it falls under pending. And blocked is when is at the maximum threshold set for a transaction, meaning that this transaction is definitely fraudulent. So these are the three items, and in this demo, I'll be acting as risk analyst, and I'll acting as someone passing transaction to the engine and seeing how it picks it up. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to go to is manage rules. So basically, these are the rules that will be set for each transaction, right? Risk analyst comes here and he sets different rules whereby once these rules are picked up, uh, a transaction can fall into those categories if it's fraudulent or not. Yeah, so the first thing I'll do is I'll create a new rule, right? You can see that there are some examples here, but I'll create a new rule and we can itemize the whole process. So I'm going to create a rule. I'm going to set, trying to think of a rule. Okay, let me say device operating system is Windows. Yes, yes. Device operating system is Windows. So I created a new rule. So now how the rules are being set, there are different parameters, meaning that these are transaction categories, right? The actual transaction, the user details, card details, device details, address, and AML screening. So these are categories, and depending on the parameter you set, there are actions and there are subcategories under each parameter. So I'm creating a rule for device. So once I go to device, there's going to be a new drop down for device actions. So I'm trying to select operating system, right? So I select operating system, and then there's a drop down of values. So values can either be hard coded, can either be input fields or drop down fields, right? For this operating system is a drop down field, meaning that there are preset operating systems, but it can also be added and configured depending on the use case. So I want to flag for every device operating system. So let's say we have noticed a hack or a bypass using Windows operating system, and I want every device using that should bypass a check or be flagged as a fraudulent transaction, right? So this is a use case for that. The other use cases you can do amount transaction, but I'm just using this as the first use case. So the match criteria is basically um, comparison parameters, right? But for this particular one, Windows, right? I can't use alphanumeric match criteria, so I'll just put equals to. And so now this is what I was talking about around allowed, blocked, and pending, right? So I had to set a score rule, and how it works is that once the range falls between allowed and blocked, it becomes a pending case, right? Once is outside this allowed on the lower level, it means that it's going to be allowed. From 0 to 25 will be allowed, from 25 to 74 will be pending, and 74 upwards will be blocked, right? So this is where the different kinds of statuses fall under. So yeah, so I'm going to create this rule now. So I create the rule. So the rule has been successfully created, meaning that at this point I will see the rule here and I've set my score rule. So now these are other rules that have been created in the past, and you can see there are different use cases among greater than this location data and different tests. So now, so the next thing now is to actually test if the engine works, right. And in the next slide I will be demoing it via Postman, so it might get a bit technical, but we'll just follow along and I will display how it works. So this is the monitor endpoint, right? So this is the first iteration of the implementation whereby we use set rules to be able to flag a transaction, right? And how it works is that after every analyst has set different rules, the user or the person integrating has to pass the transaction parameters through our endpoint for our engine to pick up if those rules that have been set are existing in transaction body. So you remember when I was setting parameters, and these are the different parameters: transaction, the user, device, address, AML. So this is an example of a parameter body, right? And how it will be set. So I've set a new rule for device type to be operating system, shouldn't be Windows. So best way to test that is modifying the OS that is going to be passed to um, the engine or the monitoring endpoint to be Windows, right? Because remember we've set device operating system is Windows, right? And if this rule is picked up, it should automatically block it because it's the higher range. But not that because it's an equal to, right? Is the similarity score would depend on the engine picking up how much it matches. That might be a bit technical, but yeah, that's basically it. So I'll put this operating system as Windows just for the demo sake, right? Let me create a new user so that we can see. I'm just going to um, take me and just know this is for demo purposes, right? Uh, Hola. Okay, so let me add a new phone number just in case. So yeah, I'm going to call this engine with this transaction body. Note that the other rules have been set, right? So I it might pick up multiple different use cases. So number of rules that are set here, the engine is going to go through everything and pick up whatever matches the transaction and give a response. So I'm going to call this endpoint now. Okay. So I call the endpoint, and the response from the endpoint is first the event, right, which shows the actual transaction. I'm just going to then it shows you the key observations that it gets from um, the transaction. Remember, I set a new rule, right? That device operating system is equals to Windows. And because I passed a device type of Windows here, as you can see, and the operating system Windows, it picked it up as pending. So meaning that the engine was able to successfully check that transaction, go through the transaction, and use a similarity score to compare if it matches the rules that have been set for that transaction. So this is a working example of how the engine works. So now the flag is pending. So I'll go back to dashboard. Sorry, I'll go back to dashboard and I'll refresh. Just refresh. Uh, Hold on, let me. Okay. So yes, it shows the device operating system as Windows. I'm just okay. My bad. I should have changed the name. Let me see if okay. Okay, so this is so I call the endpoint locally, so that's why it's not showing. But ideally, right, it's meant to show this new profile as flagged, right, and then gives you an overview. So I'll just demo the current one that is there, so that I don't have to run it twice. So this is a transaction, right? So this is a user that is a flag profile. He has different transactions of that same user. So a user can have multiple transactions, right? And in the transaction history, you can see the details of the user's transaction. So at this point, he has added some comments because the rules that have been set for this transaction match these particular use cases. So for example, the person wants to remove every betting transaction, the risk analyst wants to flag every betting transaction, and he puts placeholders for different bet institutions, and the engine was able to flag that this was a betting transaction and block it automatically, right? So this is a short demo of how fraud detect currently works. I hope it is very is not as technical as I want it to be, as explanatory as possible. So thank you.